This is BBC Radio Cambridgeshire.
So we were asking this morning, is it time to ditch the PCSOs and get real bobbies back on the beat? And we sent our reporter, Bobby Ben, on the beat to look out for a PCSO.
Yes, good morning, Christopher. We are at Cambridge Market. The stallholders are busy working, putting all their produce and their items on their stalls, ready for another busy day of trading. And we're here because we thought it might be a good spot to see bobbies on the beat this morning. No sign of them so far, but we'll keep you updated on that. And of course, we're asking the big 9 o'clock question: is it time to get rid of PCSOs in Cambridgeshire? Labelled, of course, as Blunkett's Bobbies, after the Home Secretary who introduced them, the then Labour Home Secretary, David Blunkett. And as we've been hearing this morning, Norfolk have made the move of getting rid of their PCSOs, so we're asking, should they follow suit in Cambridgeshire? I'm joined by Richard Taylor. He's a Cambridge resident who blogs on police issues. Richard, let me start you off then with getting your thoughts generally on PCSOs and how useful they are.
Well, good morning. I've been suggesting that we should have, instead of having PCSOs, we should promote those who are capable into fully empowered police constables. A PCSO can cost about the same as a police constable, and I think it just doesn't make sense to spend the money on someone who doesn't have the powers and who we can't use in the same ways, if for the same price we can have someone who, a police constable, who we can use in all sorts of different ways.
Because that might be the surprising factor for people listening at home, that PCSOs have a range of powers that they're allowed, but they're not got some of the powers, so to speak, that full officers have.
Well, they don't have the powers of arrest, and they don't have many of the powers that are needed to investigate crime, and also they're not used in the same way. PCSOs aren't used whenever there's any threat of violence, and we need the kind of policing I want. As I think we need to tackle things where there is a threat of violence, a threat of injury, a threat of harm. Here on the Market Square on the 30th of September this year, we had a case in the early hours of the morning. Taxi drivers were calling the police because there was violence, disorder, and there were no police officers to send. Now, if instead of spending the money on PCSOs who don't work in the early hours of the morning, they very rarely work late into the night, they don't work 24/7, we could have had more police officers, and someone might have been available to send.
At the last review that I'm aware of for PCSOs, I think the then Police and Crime Commissioner, Sir Graham Bright, lowered the amount we have. Was that a step in the right direction then, as far as you're concerned?
It was. So we've had a peak of the PCSOs in Cambridge and Peterborough was about just over 210, and that was in 2010. And we're now down to about 138, I think it is. So the number's been dropping, but what we haven't seen from either the previous or the current Police and Crime Commissioner is them really coming out in public to say, let's get rid of these PCSOs and let's switch them to fully empowered PCs. And I think that's because it's a very difficult thing to do. It's not something that's publicly popular. PCSOs are the front line of policing. That's why it's important to talk about it. And people see their PCSOs, so they value them. So if we are going to use that money to employ police constables, what we need to do is ensure that those police constables remain visible like PCSOs are. So PCSOs were brought in to tackle what's essentially a management problem in the police. We couldn't keep police visible on the streets. So if we're going to go back to having PCs rather than PCSOs, we need to keep some of those officers visible on the streets doing that traditional policing role.
The fear might be from some people that you see the end of the traditional Bobby on the beat. The police are saying they're dealing with new and more modern crimes every day, like things like cyber crime. So they really need to employ experts in that field rather than things like PCSOs and your average Bobby on the beat. If you were to get rid of PCSOs and employ people who could deal with the more complex crimes, you won't see anyone on the streets, will you?
Well, we really need to couple this with essentially encouraging some people in the police, making a career out of being a basic police constable who spends a lot of their time in high visibility roles. And there's a lot of evidence that a little bit of high visibility policing, but it does two things. It gives people confidence that the police are there if they're called upon, and it also just reduces crime. There's evidence that just a very small, if someone in uniform turns up just for 10 or 20 minutes a day in an area, that can have a big impact on the crime figures.
Thank you very much, Richard. That's Richard's thoughts on the role of the PCSO. We should say I've been given the task of trying to play a game of I Spy with a member of Cambridgeshire Police this morning. So far, I've had no luck. If I was playing last night, though, Chris, at the football, there were plenty of officers that would have got me victory in a game of I Spy. And as I look around this morning, we've seen a couple of what I assume are the council's enforcement officers who can deal with very low-level problems like aggressive begging or littering, but no sign of a police officer on the beat in Cambridge Market this morning.
Undercover operative Ben Stevenson there in the central Market Square in Cambridge, and he was talking to Richard Taylor, the police issue blogger.